It is another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the two new releases of June 27th, 2008. We're wrapping the month up here. We are still in the middle of the summertime, and we have two good movies here. One's pretty good. One is one of my favorite movies of all time. So let's just go ahead and get to that one right away. It's the biggest new release of the weekend. Let's talk about WALL-E. As you see, I had to cut the trailer down because that trailer uses the music from Brazil, of course. And as much as I want to use even though that was my introduction to that music in particular, I'm not risking copyright claims. But who knows? I'm still probably going to get it anyway. But you get the gist of the idea from the trailer if you've seen it in full. You've got a story about a solitary robot named WALL-E who's on a future uninhabited, deserted Earth in 2805. Making it too hard on myself. In 2805, left to clean up the garbage left on the planet. He is visited by this robot called Eve, sent from the spaceship Axiom, with whom he falls in love and pursues across the galaxy until they make it to the Axiom, and that's where their next adventure begins. And I pretty much have covered this movie already in my favorite movies of all time, because this is one of my favorite films of all time. It's my favorite Pixar film. It's a movie that I just love to death, man. I think this is just such an incredible, incredible movie, from the visuals to the story, to the wonderful characters. The fact that the first half of this movie is literally just watching these two robots is working together and really not really talking at all. There's very little dialogue in the first half of this movie, and it's so refreshing to see and be heard, and like it's very well done on so many levels. It's a wonderful, wonderful movie. Even when it gets to the second half of the film and you have all the other characters that are being introduced, like the captain of the ship played by Jeff Garlin, you've got the two human characters you follow, John Ratzenberger and Kathy the Jimmy. Even though they're kind of unnecessary to the storyline, they're not bad to the point where they feel like they're kind of forced in there. No, they're serviceably put in there, and they do serve as a little side plot to the main storyline here. But the main focus is on WALL-E and Eve. WALL-E has never had to deal with another person before, another thing before, and he falls in love with Eve. And you buy their chemistry, you buy their relationships, and there's a lot of great scenes in here where the animation really does take control of it all. You'll never forget the scene where they're just dancing in the stars, and it's just like, there's just so much I've talked about with this movie before. It's really one of the great animated achievements of all time. We're getting to that point where, the Academy Awards, at this point, they had only nominated one film for Best Animated Feature, and that was Beauty and the Beast, which, in my opinion, should have won. I like that movie way better than Silence of the Lambs. But, this was one of those movies where everyone was saying, this should have been a shoo-in for Best Picture. This should have been a Best Picture nominee. And just like that, and another movie that we'll eventually get to, it was not put in there because the Academy just didn't want to acknowledge movies that were against what they usually nominate. They went with the Oscar bait movies. Some of them were good, but most of them were not as good as stuff like WALL-E and another movie that we're going to get to here. And it basically forced the Academy Awards to expand the Best Picture thing, so people would stop getting pissed off about them doing it. But even then, they weren't really using the 10 Best Picture nominations until just just the last 4 years, honestly. Even more than that, maybe like probably 2022, I think 2022 was the first time they used 10 full Best Picture nominees, which, you've had that sitting there for 13 years, and you never bothered to use it until now. But regardless, this is a film that should have been a Best Picture nominee, honestly. This should have been one of the 5 Best Picture nominees, along with this and another film that we're going to get to in a little bit, but this definitely should have been in that category. This is that good of a film. I've talked about this movie to death so many times before. If you want to hear what I had to say about it, click the link in the corner so you can check out my full review on WALL-E. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it really is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one I go back to all the time. It's a masterpiece. It's the best thing Pixar has ever produced. It's one of the best animated films you'll ever see. What more can you say, man? WALL-E is amazing. So let's go ahead and move on to the second film we have here, the last film we have here, and that's James McAvoy, Morgan Freeman, and Angelina Jolie starring in Wanted. So yeah, this film was definitely met with a very interesting opinion from most people in particular. One of the things that you got to know right from the get-go is that this is based off of a comic book series by Mark Millar, but in the comic book, it was supervillains. But in this movie, it's a secret society of assassins that is the main focus of the storyline here. You've got a movie where you have James McAvoy as this guy, Wesley Gibson, who decides to join the fraternity, which is a secret society of assassins, after learning that his father was a member of the fraternity. And, yeah, the first thing you're going to notice right from the get-go is the fact that it's assassins instead of supervillains, which I don't know why they decided to do it and do it that way, but they did it, and to its credit, it works fine for what they're trying to do here. I mean, it does work in the context of what they're trying to do here, and I think it's because that, you know, the creator Mark Millar Mark Millar looked at this and said, "Okay, I'll let you do this," and he was more content to let those elements from the comics be in here, but just change the fact that supervillains to assassins. He was more than okay with that, and I think that leads to the film being a pretty solid movie overall. Is it a great movie? No, there's definitely a lot of flaws to it, but it's a very entertaining film, and it's a film that I think James McAvoy in particular really shines in here. I mean, you feel some of the pain that this guy has to go through in his normal everyday life. There's a great moment when, you know, he finally snaps it when his boss, I think it's his boss that just keeps bugging the hell out of him, and you know, there's just this great point where he just screams at the top of his lungs at her, "Shut the fuck up!" And like moments like that are just so well done, and you just feel his pain because you've been through that before. I've been through that situation my entire life when somebody will just not stop talking and talking and talking, and you just want to go, "Shut the fuck up!" Like. And then he completely loses it and goes straight to the fraternity. Like he beats up Star-Lord. Chris Pratt's also in this movie, and he beats him up with a keyboard. And again, a lot of that's taken from the comic book overall. And one of the things that really kind of hurts the film overall is that it's a story that is kind of very generic overall. There's nothing really about it that makes it stand out compared to the original source material, and it is fun to watch the impressive action sequences here from this director, Timon Bekmambetov, who also did the Night Watch series, and also he did, what else did he do? Did he do something else before this, or was it just the, okay, he did the Night Watch and Day Watch, but other than that, he hasn't really done anything of noteworthiness since then. Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, the remake of Ben-Hur. Yeah, you probably don't even remember those movies existed, but you remember this one because, yeah, there was a lot of stylish, cool-looking action sequences here and a very good story overall to make it work. Angelina Jolie is very charismatic in here. James McAvoy is very good. Morgan Freeman is a ton of fun to watch. Like, I love the fact that, you know, here's a movie where you finally get to hear Morgan Freeman pull out his inner Samuel Jackson and say, "Shoot this motherfucker." And just the way he says it, you know, "Shoot this motherfucker," like with that voice of his, like, that distinctive voice of his yelling the word motherfucker, like, it works. It works very well. And, yeah, it's a fun movie. It's the perfect definition of a fun summer blockbuster film. Like, you go into it, you get a big tub of popcorn, you get a drink, and you just go sit in there and have a good time with it. And it really is a good time all across the board. It's a very fun film, a very enjoyable film. Take it for what it is, and you really enjoy the hell out of it. And I certainly did enjoy the hell out of it, per se. So, that's my thoughts on Wanted. So, with that said, we're going to wrap up this episode of Time About the Movies, and the next time we meet, it'll be the halfway point of the year with one big new release, and, who better to open a movie on the 4th of July than Will Smith? We'll talk about his superhero movie, Hancock, on the next episode. That's coming up tomorrow. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell. You get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. And don't go too far away, because after I'm done posting this up here, coming up on Time About the Movies Flashback, we're flashing back to a little bit before we get to the halfway point of 1987, June 26th, with 3 really good movies: Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks in Dragnet, the Mel Brooks spoof comedy classic Spaceballs, and Stanley Kubrick's war classic Full Metal Jacket. So we got 3 films to look at on that. Time About the Movies Flashback coming your way right after I'm done posting this. So stick around, we will be back.